All right, doing it again. So this time, another 3-bet pot. This board texture is going to be a paired rainbow board with Broadway cards, specifically kings. I don't think this changes too much if it's aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, that kind of stuff. Not too much. Obviously, aces, kings, queens are going to be better for the three flop. Pre-flop, three better. And slightly different board texture to like 884, which is the previous board archetype I did. Again, this is the exact same ranges. Three better, three betting a button open seems pretty standard. Exact same flatting range. Sometimes ace king gets in here. Yada yada. We've seen this before. Bet sizing is exact same as well. I clicked the all-in button on the river. I don't think it really matters much. It's pretty obvious when stacks are getting in on these sims. Not much to discuss there. And this is a pretty straightforward sim. I think everybody knows that this is a really, really good board for out of position. Equity is 57%. They have more strong king X's. They have quads. They have all these overpairs that can counterfeit, on certain runouts, even these lower pairs, that kind of stuff. And they end up with more boat combos because they have more king X than they do 8X on runouts. So even these backdoor flushes are not as solid floats. They don't have two overs. The in-position play doesn't have two overs as often, that kind of stuff. And so we see equity for out of positions pretty good. And the EV, they even have an EV advantage here. Just quickly want to do 57 times 20, it's 11.4, right? So that's 21, so just add another 0.57, so it's 11.9. So they are even outperforming their EV on this board. This is just a really strong board for out of position, so they're going to be betting a lot. Unsurprising, they're betting 97.8% of the time. Sick. I would probably just bet a third with my entire range. You could probably exploitably go bigger here with King X. I don't really understand why we're going larger with our 9X. I guess I can see, again, we're going bigger with weak hands that have backdoor flush draws, except for like Jack 8 of spades, 10 8 of spades is betting large here. I would probably just bet small with these hands exploitably, but yeah, I think overall this makes sense. I'm not too sure why we're betting these hands in particular bigger with no backdoors. Especially when we block like the worst part of our opponent's range. I don't really get that, but whatever. Overall, seems pretty straightforward, and I bet the EV difference, well, I can actually check, of betting 3/4 and a third here is not that different. Yeah, it ends up being, 0.0033 in a pot of 21, so pretty, minimal. The only thing that the bet sizing drastically changes is on boats and quads, where you should just bet a third. And a third. Cool. I can dig that. I don't particularly think that that in position has many races. Like, they just, if you want to mix in like ace-5 of hearts or clubs or diamonds, I guess I could see why, but you really don't get to have a raising range on King, King 3. It doesn't really make sense. You don't really have enough value hands here to make it worth your time. You do have some suited kings, I guess, and sometimes King, Queen, King, Jack offsuit, but really you just crush on this board a lot. So I would imagine you're just calling your entire range. I don't even know what the worst turn would be for out of position. I think this is just like a really good board. Interesting that a 4, I guess that makes sense, like these wheel type cards. Ace X suited peels are going to be pretty good, especially when they have the backdoor flush draw. They're going to be pretty good for out of position or in position. But yeah, it looks like you're still just betting You're betting your hands that block their strongest king X, and you're doing it half pot, which is their 2/3 pot, 3/4 pot, which is the sizing I put in. I knew that. I guess with these like 0 equity hands, and I bet you're just barreling off with them. Yep, you're just saying, all right, you don't have enough to defend here. This is something I'm not doing. So like I would imagine if this is queen queen, we would do this with like ace jack, ace queen, ace king, ace jack type hands. You know, blocking the strongest queen X from our opponent's holdings. Probably ace 10 too, but that makes sense. Interesting that like, I'll be honest, I really did not think this would be there would be as bad of equity turns as there are for out of position. Like having 57% equity on this flop and then suddenly like the best turn is an ace, which, I mean, right, you just have 57% equity on this flop and then you're called, and now the best card, you lose equity no matter what when called, I guess. I guess that makes sense. Like if you're calling, you're not like the folding portion of the range play has the least amount of equity, so I guess that makes sense. And maybe I'm just overthinking this, but it doesn't seem like any card is particularly good or bad for out of position, other than these wheel cards, which is something to note is good for in position, and you know, an ace or most Broadway cards are just pretty neutral in general. In terms of node locking, I don't really know if population is deviating from this strategy that often. I mean, it's possible that they are raising pairs more often than they should, and kings more often than they should. But I think that just means that like you just have so few combos of kings that you, at a position, just calls down with value and can probably 3-bet pretty liberally as a bluff with like a backdoor, like, you know, ace queen of clubs, that type of thing. And that makes sense to me. Anyway, this wasn't a very, you know, long video. I don't really know how many nodes I can or how many deviations in population tendency I can find on this type of board, but just part of the different types of flops, and there will be more interesting ones later on, I guess. So that is that.